everyone, and welcome to the October edition of the Economist Intelligence Unit's Global Outlook video. My name is Agathe Demarais, I'm the Global Forecasting Director at EIU. I'm joined today by Emily Mansfield, the Principal Economist in our Europe team based in London. Today, we're going to discuss the content of a recent white paper that our Europe team published about Europe's coming energy crunch. Emily, I'm going to turn to you for a first question. With Russian gas supplies to Europe close to zero, which countries do you think are most at risk of gas shortages this winter?
Well, one of the countries most likely to see gas shortages is Germany. It's historically been very highly dependent on Russian gas, and it's got few options to get supplies from elsewhere, particularly in the short term. Its first LNG terminal is only going to open at the end of this year. Storage capacity is now over 90% full, but without continued inflows, that would only be enough to get through 2.5 months. So some really dramatic reductions in demand are going to have to happen this winter. We're already seeing firms switching away from gas, in some cases importing very energy intensive inputs, and in others, increasingly mothballing production completely. If this doesn't prove to be enough, then rationing will have to be brought in, particularly for those really energy intensive firms in the chemicals and metal sectors. And to give a sense of the scale of this, Germany's biggest chemicals producer, BASF, uses the same amount of gas in a year as the entire country of Denmark. So some fairly big savings possible. If these don't prove enough, then there is a risk of blackouts for the household sector this winter, but the government is going to do as much as it can to avoid this. In terms of other countries that are most affected, Austria, for the same reasons as Germany, and Italy. Italy has done a better job of diversifying its gas supplies away from Russia, but there is still a risk that it could run short this winter. Of course, it does have that pipeline to Algeria, which has become its biggest gas supplier now, so that helps to some degree. But still, these three economies, Germany, Austria, and Italy, add up to 40% of the total EU economy. So a recession just in these three places would have a really big impact on the headline EU numbers. And actually, the biggest forecast downgrades that we're implementing at the moment are to Central European economies, in particular the Czech Republic and Slovakia. They're really going to face a triple shock this winter. Energy shortages, very high inflation, but also the spillover effects from this recession in Germany, because of course they are very highly integrated into German supply chains.
And you've just mentioned inflation, which is obviously making headlines across the Eurozone. Which countries do you think are most exposed to inflation?
Well, to some degree, this is a problem that infects the entire region, as you can see in the chart on the right. We have a cost of living crisis that's happening across Europe already, but there are a few country-specific factors that will influence how bad this is from place to place. First, some countries have very energy-intensive industrial sectors. Bulgaria is one example. It's got 2.5 times the energy intensity of the EU average, and that comes from some very inefficient industrial processes. This is now very costly. Secondly, some countries have consumers have to spend a very large share of their income on energy. And this is the case in the Baltic states, for example. They've had inflation above 20% for a while now. Estonia actually in August had the highest inflation rate in the Eurozone at over 25%. The final factor is the government's policy response. So, for example, those countries where a price cap has been in place for a while, such as France, have much lower energy prices and also much lower inflation. But this is actually a poison chalice, because if we keep energy costs down, then that, of course, reduces the incentive to reduce usage. And we really do need to cut usage across Europe to avoid shortages this winter. France is actually a wildcard in more ways than one. It's got half of its 56 nuclear reactors that have had to go offline this year for maintenance, just at the worst moment. And if they're not up and running again in time for this winter, then France's energy import needs will put even more pressure on the already strained gas supply situation in Europe.
So a very bleak situation ahead for the Eurozone this winter. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for your insights. And thank you for watching us today. You can find our latest analysis and white papers on our website, www.eiu.com. Thank you for watching us today. Thank you. Goodbye.